Hello. I'm the current president of Yes California. My name is Marcus Ruiz Evans, but I was originally the vice president of Yes California, and then originally the research director of Sovereign California, and originally the author of the book that started the entire Calexit movement. So I've been along this journey from day one. Many people have come to Calexit and to Yes California and said, if you want to talk about why people should want California to leave and become a separate country, you have to tell them the future California and how it's going to be. To which we answered, hey, the question is that are we or are we not being held back by America, by American regulations, by American financial systems? And would we or would we not make better decisions if we only had to talk with ourselves and make decisions with just Californians? If you believe those two things, you're in the movement. Yes, I trust Californians making decisions better than America. And I believe that American regulations do hold us back. And I don't want my money shipped out. And I do believe we'd be better here. And I do trust us, even though we'll make mistakes and even though we'll have politicians who are stupid, that in general you would think that Californians would be making better decisions if it was no federal interference and just Californians involved in the process there with the future California state. So because of that hard line, we have had to rebuff and tell people who said, hey, you need to take a stance on climate change and you need to take a stance on pet cruelty. And we said, those are all good points, but we're trying to say everybody's invited to join the movement. Everybody can join. And if you're a California nationalist where you just think, yeah, we make mistakes, yeah, we have problems, but we do better on our own, then you're in. That's how we were able to get so big. So we have told many people, no, we're not taking a stance on that. We have explored options in different white papers, California's Future in 2015, and then the Calexit Blue Book in 2018. California's Future was covered by the LA Times in 2015 by the reporter Abakarian, I believe was her last name. She read it and said it was a tomb. California's Blue Book was featured on Rachel Maddow. So those have been out there. We explored ideas. We never said this has to be this way. We said, maybe you could do this. And one of the ideas that we explored initially was saying, hey, why don't we back the entire policy guidebook from the Black Lives Matter movement? So around 2016, Black Lives Matter came out with a policy guidebook, Vision Zero, something about reducing all of the racial disparities and violence against African Americans in a comprehensive manner. I'm forgetting the exact title of that, but that official guidebook we backed and endorsed in our white papers exploring that idea. Additionally, in 2015, we were running political candidates, and Bart Gilbert, who's passed away, was out there with people running for office in front of a police office substation, talking about police brutality against African Americans while running for office. Now, all sorts of politicians protest the police and run for office. 2015, no one was doing that but us. Now, corporate America backs Black Lives Matter. In 2015, 2016, there wasn't many people who just endorsed the Black Lives Matter policy manual in full. But here's the thing. We never took stances. You're right. Those weren't stances. Those were policy explorations in different white papers. Absolutely true. So I want to correct that. Yes, California stands by the idea that if you are a California nationalist, you're in. You already know what that means. We have taken 2 stances to date and said, in a future California, you must do this and address this issue. And here's how we thought you might go about doing that. But you have to address this issue. And we don't think that any California nation that doesn't address this issue is worthy of existing. That's a huge statement from us. We don't go around saying that, okay? That kills our movement to say these things. So We have a huge big tent, but there was a couple issues where we said, look, you have to address this. There's no way you're going to be an independent country and you don't address this. And it's probably, or at least something in the realm of what we gave as a policy subscription for people to check out. So here were the two previous stances we did. In 2015, we took the stance that all undocumented immigrants who have been here somewhere between 1 to 5 years, that's up for debate, should be recognized as full citizens. Doesn't matter what America thinks. Doesn't matter if they came here legally. If you have lived here in our communities, you're a Californian and you get to be treated like everybody else. We said that in 2015, 2016. It was called the California Immigration Reform Act, and it was heavily explored and promoted by UC Davis law professor Kevin R. Johnson. In 2018, we took a stance that all federal land should be returned to the indigenous at a minimum as a start. Maybe they get even more than that. That there should be a vote and the indigenous should choose to take all the land back. Now, we have suggested that if they take the land back, it would be a good idea for them to work with California to jointly manage that based upon what one of our own members, Matt Owens, has suggested is the San Bernardino regional example of indigenous and California government working together in a checkerboard pattern. But that's up to them. And we've always said that. We said, give them all the land back and hope that they want to work with you, but give it back to them. Said that in 2018. It was called the Autonomous Native Nation. We made it onto Tucker Carlson. Everyone talked about that. But nobody really backed us on that. Today, no other CalExit organization has said, yes, California was right. Let's return all federal land to the indigenous. There's other CalExit organizations. Not one of them has backed that like that. They said maybe indigenous should have some land. Of course, they should have some. Nobody said start with all federal land returned to them and go from there. No one, just us. It's been 2 years later. No one's ever backed us up on that. We're on our second indigenous tribe that's endorsed that and specifically referred to our proposal by Yes California. Still, no backers. Now, the immigration thing from 2015, everybody says, yes, let's recognize undocumented immigrants. So that one has come into acceptance. We said it in 2015, nobody was saying it then. That's why Kevin R. Johnson, the law school professor, talked about it, because he's like, nobody's talking about this. Years later, other people promoted that, but we were first. Just like with saying we should return all federal land to the indigenous, we were first. Now the Supreme Court just did that with Oklahoma. So here's our third stance ever. You should do this if you want to be independent. It is our opinion. And we think that if you don't do this, it's not really a very worthy nation. That's just our opinion. Californians are going to choose what to believe. They'll believe some of what we say. They'll reject other things that we say. But if they're going to ask, what does the group that actually got this whole thing started and is the biggest, most popular, and most charging group in CalExit doing this, what stance are they taking? It's going to be that we did 3, or perhaps 3 stances here in California. West Coast. One was recognizing all the indigenous. We promoted the idea of the California Immigration Reform Act. The other one was our suggestion of the Autonomous Native Nation, which was the idea of returning all federal land in 2018. Our third one now is going to be Black Lives Matter legislation, specifically AB 32, as written by Patrisse Cullors, the Californian. AB 392, written in fiscal year 2019 to 2020 by Patrisse Cullors, was an incredible piece of legislation. It would have rewritten basic legal structure for law enforcement as you haven't seen in decades or possibly 200 years. It was significant. Would it have worked perfectly? I don't know. Would it have solved everything? Probably not. Would it have been a giant game-changing decision which every day afterwards, when we talk about police brutality to the African American community, it would be a completely different world? Yes, guaranteed. It would have changed things. Guaranteed. That's why it was destroyed. Patrisse Cullors wrote this, AB 392, And initially, Black Lives Matter backed it. 17 families in California, Latinos, African Americans backed it and said, hey, this is the right thing to do. Many assembly people came out. All of the African American assembly members came out and said that's a great idea. And then right before it was to be passed, they gutted all the major parts of it and passed it anyways. Black Lives Matter pulled out, but the African American legislators of California's government said, let's do it anyways, and it's a great day. So, vendido. Orderly. Anyways, yes, California now makes it our third stance. And the Black Lives Matter can hold us to account. So if we get big and CalExit gets going, Black Lives Matter, I am inviting you. Yes, California, you said you would insist to the extent possible that AB 392, as written by the California Patrisse Cullors, is reintroduced, just as you've insisted that returned land be given to the indigenous and that recognized Californians who are underneath the law with their status here are brought into the fold. This is our third stance. You can hold us to it. We've taken no other insisted stance ever. This is our third one. In the description, you can look up the text, but we're going to say AB 392 is introduced by Patrisse Cullors, is something that we're going to hold to from now forever. And if we get very successful, you can hold it to us and call us a hypocrite if we do not enforce that with equal energy as we have the other two. This is the biggest thing that I can give you. I've given it to you now. We did take stances on Black Lives Matter in 2015. We endorsed the policy guidance. We protested in front of police stations with Bart Gilbert. But it wasn't enough. I want to correct that mistake now. I apologize to the two Californians who invented Black Lives Matter and the two Californians who invented the stance of kneeling in defiance of America and its historic racism. And I apologize to all Californians. I should have done this sooner. It was a mistake, and I'm sorry. That's all I have.